Many young kids struggle with irritating clothing, big crowds and gatherings, haircuts, loud noises, and quick transitions. And small sensory sensitivities add up to big emotional struggles. But where are these struggles coming from? And why is it so hard to find answers? So, moms, dads, if you are the parent of a small child or toddler or elementary kid that struggles to participate in certain activities because it's just too overwhelming for them from a sensory or a behavioral perspective, this is something you're going to want to hear. I'm making this for you. Today, we're looking back at development to find the cause of so many of these sensory storms and integration struggles from a brain and a nervous system perspective. When we look through this lens, it gives a fresh perspective on what is possible. There's nothing harder than having a child that just isn't thriving. These exciting moments in life, the birthday parties, the first haircut, the family gatherings, your child's reclusive, they don't want to participate, they're upset by transitions and new things. And as a new dad myself, Haley and I are experiencing tons of new things and milestones, and we're seeing Benny grow and change and develop and transitions in his life. And I can only imagine how difficult it would be to not be able to handle these transitions. And on a daily basis, I talk to moms and dads who are having different experiences than this because their child just doesn't go well with these transitions, whether it be a meltdown, pulling away from everything, behavioral outbursts, tantrums, hyperactivity, whatever you want to call it, that perfect storm of change over time. Their child is not handling these sensory overload systems well. But with every one of these children that comes in, has an insight scan to look at the objective measure of their nervous system and what's going on inside, begins a care plan to address these objective measures that we can change within the system. I have to tell you, when I hear reports like I just heard 15 minutes ago with other therapists commenting on how much better these kids are doing at every session since starting care, that fills my heart up. This is why I do what I do. To have a parent tell me that they went from their child hiding in the corner when happy birthday was sung to them to being in the center, singing happy birthday themselves to themselves, man, that's just the coolest thing ever. And in finding how it's possible, the key is to focus on how the sensory system can get stressed during these struggles throughout development, especially during birth and delivery. See the old birth trauma video. And we see long-term sensory challenges coming from persistent stress stuck on sympathetic neurology. I always use the description, you're driving down the road, going 35, speed limit's 40. You go to change lanes, you put your blinker on 5 seconds before you change lanes. You are the safest driver. You get that lane change, don't cut anybody off, check all your mirrors, and you see a police car pull out behind you. The blue lights go on, the siren goes on. You've done everything right. You've done nothing wrong. But that police officer, he's got those lights on. And for that split second, your heart skips a beat. You get that blood runs cold feeling. You're apprehensive and you're a little scared about what's going on. That's that fight or flight nervous system taking over. Now, usually the police officer will whiz right by you and get the other person that blew through the red light. But the important part of the story is understanding that feeling, that fight or flight feeling that you have in that split second, it goes away. But what if it doesn't go away? What if that's the state that you're constantly in? And when we see kids that are struggling through sensory challenges in development, that's how they feel. In this stress stuck on system, the blue lights are behind them all the time. So let's take a look at this beautiful pyramid we've drawn for just a moment. Now, when we look at a pyramid, we know that we start with the base. And the base of any pyramid when we're talking about function and neurology is the brain and the nervous system. We're talking about the sensory response to the environment. We're going to have our first experiences in life and development as we go through conception, through pregnancy, riding along with mama, coming into delivery, whether that be a normal vaginal delivery with the compressive forces that are needed to kind of kickstart and start that nervous system up. Or in other cases, we might have some distractive forces such as a C-section or a vacuum or forceps type delivery. Now, those are the areas where we see the first insult to the nervous system. And in utero, we have all of this brain and nervous system sensory response environment development. And it's important to look at these first three blocks are these sensory building phases of our body. Once we build upon that brain and nervous system, the way that we can respond to our environment, that sensory portion driving more development, we see the basics. We see our neurological soft signs. We see eating, sleeping, and pooping. We're talking about a baby's ability to latch, baby's ability to calm themselves, find that restful state, that parasympathetic system working like it's supposed to. And then also plumbing, getting everything out. And that's not just poop. That's taking things like drainage through the eustachian tubes. So we're not getting fluid buildup in the middle ear and causing ear infections. So not only are we talking about plumbing from a digestive standpoint, we're talking about the immune system and the lymphatic system too. Now, all of these things are going to be the building blocks to have motor and movement patterns, which is where we see our rolling over, our crawling, and our walking. And that order is very important, making sure that we can roll over to both sides, that we can crawl with a normal quadruped position and not have a drag crawl and army crawl. And then ultimately walking. We want to go through these orders of events so that we can build that coordinative system. And then on top of that, boom, we hit the sensory integration struggles. And those are our big brain things. Our big brain cognitive events are going to be built upon everything below from a sensory and a motor system and are going to dictate how we respond socially, emotionally, and behaviorally. Now, it's important to understand that kids can be overstimulated or understimulated, and both fall under the umbrella of a sensory processing disorder. What are some instances of overstimulated? Glad you asked. If clothes are too itchy, sounds are too loud, lights are too bright, screaming or negatively responding when they're touched, gagging due to food textures, vomiting in response to either sounds, textures, or smells. Soft touches feel too hard and uncomfortable, reacting extremely to sudden movements. We see poor balance, clumsiness, and poor motor skills, fine motor skills like writing with a pencil. Now, kids that are understimulated will often engage in sensory seeking behaviors, which can look like being antsy or having trouble sitting still, not picking up on social cues or personal space. They may engage in thrill-seeking behaviors like jumping from heights or spinning around until they're dizzy and falling over. Or they may not get dizzy while they're spinning. They may not respond to extreme changes in temperature. They crave visual stimulation like video games or other electronics and TVs and barraging with sensory information. They chew on things, don't recognize when their face or their body is dirty. They may have a very high pain threshold and they don't always understand their own strength. We also see things like low muscle tone, language delays, and the physical symptoms also become the source of more behavioral and emotional symptoms like frequent tantrums, poor self-esteem, social isolation, and mental health struggles like anxiety and depression. So if we see this onset of stress and struggle coming from a stressful or difficult birth or delivery, then we're going to see the body shift from that nice balance between that sympathetic stress on fight or flight state and the parasympathetic rest, digest, chill out state. And remember, this is not an on-off switch, it's a dimmer switch. But with this onset of stress and struggle early on, we're going to see that shift more towards that fight or flight side. At very young ages in infants, this is going to affect nursing, latching, sleeping, and pooping. Eat, sleep, poop, right? Like I said before, the neurological soft signs that the body is stressed out. Now, if we're stuck in this fight or flight phase for too long, we are persistent in this fight or flight stage, it actually changes how the brain and the body experience and interact with the world around it. It's going to change our brain chemistry. It's going to change the way that we respond. It's going to make little things turn into big things. And if this is happening during developmental phases, such as rolling over, sitting up, crawling, and walking, then it's going to delay the ability of the sensory system to comfort itself. This will make large gathering, loud noises, different foods, textures, clothing types be sensed or felt much differently than they should be. If you could kind of think about the old Spinal Tap way to go about it, it's just turning everything up to 11. And while good heavy metal is best enjoyed at a volume of 11 out of 10, that's not how we want our children to be perceiving their environment and their sensory information. So what we need to do is we need to focus on the brain and the nervous system. We know that when nerves fire together, they wire together. So if this nervous system is constantly in this fight or flight state, it's stressed, and that's the way it's firing, then that's the way it's going to continue to fire. What's very important is we find these areas that aren't functioning as they need to, interrupt that pattern, make a change, and start to divert the way that the system is functioning away from that stress stuck on, fight or flight, terrified of everything state, blue lights behind me, oh no, what did I do? Into a state where, yes, do we need a fight or flight response? Is it healthy for our body? Sure, we need to be able to have that response, but we shouldn't be stuck in it all the time. We need to be able to be in the parasympathetic region, be able to transition like a dimmer switch back and forth as we need and not get stuck. Focusing on this type of healing first can allow development to skyrocket in many aspects, including movement, social aspects, and especially the sensory system. So if you're a mom or a dad or a grandparent or a friend, aunt, uncle of a child that is experiencing sensory issues, please share this information. Give us a call, drop a comment, shoot me an email, send me a carrier pigeon, anything you want to do. I'm here to answer questions for you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to help your family. I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait to see you. I'll see you soon. Take care.